guess, a rather large, well, that positive COVID case.
We just finished the recount of Article 2, our town budget. And we had came up with 368 votes for yes, 365 no's, and 11 blanks. So the 2021 New Ipswich town budget passed. Do you have any opening remarks, John?
Nope.
Jason?
None here.
Alright. So, Mr. Coffey,
Yeah.
thank you for joining us this evening.
Good evening.
How you doing? And Eric Crook.
Yes. We're both here for one particular reason. We would like to suggest that Wilson Hill Road be upgraded this year. It is a through road connecting two very well paved roads. It does carry a lot of a good amount of through traffic, and we would like to see it considered. There's a pretty good base on the road right now, I think.
You want me to say something?
Oh, yeah,
Oh, you do?
yeah.
Well, I've lived on the road for 38 years. It's no surprise I've wanted it paved, but now we've talked to the neighbors, and I believe they all are in sync with that. They do. We'd like to get it paved. It is a crossroad. It's been well maintained. It's had some upgrades over the years. When I moved there, it was pretty narrow, pretty rural, but it's come a long ways. And as far as pavement, I just looking at it, as with the upgrades, I think it'd be a very, I don't say easy, but a very doable road to be paved to connect the roads. What are we talking, less than a mile?
Oh, yeah, well under a mile.
Well under a mile, and we'd like to see it done.
Okay.
There's been some culvert replacements on it too.
Yeah.
Okay.
As I say, in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, we're not directly bound, like we can bring that to the road committee, right?
We've already gotten our prices and such. It wasn't a recommendation of the road committee.
Yeah.
It wasn't a recommendation of select board. It's something that the road committee can look at for next year to be put on the list, because we're getting a lot of the other roads taken care of. So next year, I don't see any huge projects that would be roads. We were talking about maybe getting some of the, like getting up by the playground and knocking out a bunch of the smaller ones that need to get done.
Yeah.
So it's something that could be looked at for next year, but it was not on the recommendation list this year of the roads committee.
and that's where I have a question when you get to.
Just by curiosity, only because I'm familiar with it, but not familiar enough. How many houses are on Wilson Hill Road?
6.
6. Okay.
But it's not the number of houses on it, because except for Eric and I, most everybody else is toward the ends.
Right.
It's the through traffic, it's a school bus route, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just us.
Right.
But I would like to make a comment on the road committee.
Okay.
I think the road, I wasn't here a year ago, I had questions on the road committee, and I presented a right to know letter. And I never really got a complete answer. Last year, the road committee, as far as I know, posted no minutes. I can't find any indication of a road committee on the town website. Any advisory committee, according to RSA 91A, the right to know law, has to function just like this board does, or any other board. They're part of the town, and it appears they haven't done that. And the other thing is, we formed this committee as an amendment last year. 2 articles were amended, and we ended up with a road committee with the Public Works Director, I think 2 members of the Planning Board, and 2 townspeople with knowledge of roads. okay? So you can't go online into the town's website and figure out who these people are. Did they take public input? And what's their term and who appoints them? That was never clear in the article as amended. So when I looked at the ballot this year, at the deliberative section of the warrant, we had the same language in there. I could read that the road committee doesn't take shape until after the article's approved. So I can make an argument, the road committee couldn't have done its work, because you haven't appointed one for this year.
Except we appointed them so that we would have because what happened to us is, and what we preferred to do in years past, is we make the selection of what roads are going to be done, so that people will know what roads we plan on spending the money on when they're voting for the article. So, and that Chairman Lage actually would put into his report. So because last year we had already had an idea of what roads we wanted to do as a board, but then we were overridden at the deliberative session. So this road committee had to be appointed, and then we had to wait for them to give us their input, which they gave. And then off of that input, we made our final selections for the road. So in order to make sure that that didn't happen this year, since a road committee was already in place for the duration of 2020, we had that road committee reconvene and give us their selections and recommendations for roads to be redone this year. Then the article was voted in with the road committee, so that same thing can happen in 2021.
I understand that.
Okay.
And I think when you go to town meeting with an article to spend money on roads, you ought to know what the roads are.
Correct.
You ought to have a plan.
Right.
What I'm getting at is, I don't think it works with this committee. I think there's issues with this committee that affect the right to know law, serious issues. And that's why I'm saying, I'm only bringing it up because
No.
I think that this road should have been considered. I don't think it ever was considered. And I didn't see much in the way of the road committee actually getting out there and looking for public input. I could think of some other roads too, okay?
Oh, there's plenty, but I mean, over the past couple of years, what we've talked about are roads that we started doing all our feeder roads to try to get most of our feeder roads done. Any roads that were coming into town, we tried to make sure that those were trying to get done. And then we started doing connector roads. But in the meantime, we have, some of the roads that are on for this year towards the end of the list are roads that are literally falling apart, falling into themselves. For example, Mountain View Drive. The end of their road's actually falling off, the cul-de-sac. And the roads on the side, and that's been there since the Mother's Day floods. And they're finally getting that road done. Malthouse is on the list this year because they've had no repairs done except some patching, and then the first snowfall goes through and the plows put all that patchwork directly in their front yards. So that one's on there. So, and then Collins Road is on there because that was recommended by our emergency management for police, fire, as well as the buses can't get through that road. Right now, in order to get to Collins Road, they have to use a private road in order to use it.
I'm familiar with that.
So,
I'm pretty familiar with the
right.
road.
So what I'm saying is, it's, the public input we have, I guess, on that committee is the two members of the public that have, and then from the DPW director going around and people talking to him about, I guess, complaints on their road. So, my recommendation is that for next year, someone put together a warrant, whether it be this board or a member of the public, to properly form a roads committee, as a separate warrant article.
My suggestion is to put an article in the warrant to do away with all prior road committees in any way, shape, or form, just a blanket article.
Mm-hmm.
And if you wanna have a road committee, then form a road committee, knowing who appoints it. This doesn't even say who appoints the road committee. Planning board's got 2 people on it. Who appoints that? Planning board or you guys?
The planning board appoints their own members, and then we took, we had people apply for the positions. It was posted on the website last year, and we had people put in their, interest, and that's how the committee was formed, by the people that put in their interest.
Wait,
You have to
can we have,
have-
the planning board chair, Mr. Shalom Waffle, has a comment? John?
Thanks a lot, Sean. So Jim, I did receive in January of this year a list of the 2020 road committee recommendations that I'm certainly sure I can share those with you. They weren't necessarily followed by the selectmen, but those were the recommendations of the committee. Last year, the planning board appointed myself and member Nate Sikala to the road committee. During the year, we have a new member who's much more knowledgeable in road construction than I am, Mr. Lou Garino, who's an alternate member of the planning board, who has joined Nate Sikala on the road committee, and they have done it. I do share your frustrations because, last year a recommendation was to resurface a portion of Green Farm Road, and it wasn't even the last recommendation, and that didn't make it through to the final decision by the selectmen. And then my other concern with the road committee is, while I am pleased that there are 2 members of the planning board on it, I'm not sure that more than 1 member of any board can be on any other board or commission. And I don't know if a committee is a board or a commission. And I'm presuming that is because to prevent one board from also being another board. So anyhow, those are my comments.
Okay. I would view it as an advisory committee, which means any committee, council, commission, or other like body whose primary purpose is to consider an issue or issues designated by the appointing authority so as to provide such authority with advice or recommendation concerning the formulation of any public policy or legislation that may be promoted, modified, or opposed. Okay, 91A1A. Roman numeral 1. I guess the reason I bring this up is I don't think you have a functioning system for a road committee. If I read this and I look at grammar and how I learned English, this doesn't make sense. You can interpret this thing all over the place. I could interpret it that the selectmen have no authority to set priority, because the priority comes from the road committee.
The what comes from the road committee?
If I read what's created,
Mm-hmm.
they set the priority.
Well, they set recommendations.
Didn't say recommendation, they set the priority. There's different ways to read this thing, that's what I'm getting at. What I'm saying is you got a mess on your hands,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not here to solve it, other than to say, I think you need to do it over again.
Okay.
I take it under advisement. Like I said, we didn't create it. It was a member of the planning board that put that.
But what I couldn't find on the website, and if a town has a website, it must post minutes of various boards and committees on it. Or post where you can go to get them. And there's no reference anywhere to the road committee. If I look on the front of your website where it says committees and stuff like that, there's no road committee. We got the Stearns-Burton Lecture Fund on there, but we don't have the road committee.
Mm-hmm. Some of those updates we are, slow on getting onto the website.
So
and
what
some other.
I'm getting at is you
Yeah.
have a serious problem with the right to know law.
Okay.
But I'm not concerned with that, I just wanna see our road page.
Yeah. I will. We'll take a look at the road committee formation, and I guess we could see if we could take a look at Wilson Hill again.
Yep.
All right.
I mean, a lot of what you're doing is paving roads.
Yeah.
But, you could do step 1 year, and then you could pave it the next year, I've seen that done.
Right, which is what we do with many of them. On the ones that are reclaimed and such, that's what we're doing. Is we're doing a binder 1 year and then a top coat the next year.
Right, The other thing I think you could consider on Wilson Hill Road is limiting the weight of through vehicles.
Okay.
Well, I guess my question is what through vehicles are going on there that wouldn't be exempt from that?
10-wheel dump trucks.
For what? But what are they going through for? I guess I mean,
To get from hither to yon, or to get from Poor Farm Road to, Fox Farm Road. If you look at a map, and you're down in Smithville, somewhere down there, and you wanna head west on 124, it makes sense to scoot up that way, come up Fox Farm Road, and then you're not gonna go all the way over the hill and down to Poor Farm Road, no, you just shoot just the hypotenuse of a triangle, just take that, and off you go, and then you're up on 124, and you make a left and go.
John had another comment.
Oh, thanks, Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I was gonna mention, Jim, is I understand the frustration. I think, part of the impetus for getting the old portion of Green Farm paved is because Green Farm has become a through route for people looking to skip part of downtown, to go to Greenville, to get up towards the many houses that are on Stowell Road. And the planning board is concerned that there's a non-data informed process in terms of making decisions on which roads should be paved. And that's why we recommended quite strongly to the select board that they engage the Southwest Regional Planning Commission on some of their studies that they will do with regards to road conditions and such in town, to provide an external, completely objective source of information. And my understanding is that although there is a cost to that, the selectmen have agreed to work to get in line to have the SWRPC do that for the town of New Ipswich.
Correct.
Yep.
Do we have any updates on that, Scott?
So last, I heard in talking with Henry Underwood out at SWRPC is the funding mechanism. So because of what's happening both at the federal level and the state level, will determine how much funding they receive, and that will determine whether they can provide that service for gratis to the town or whether there's going to be some cost sharing to the town. And they don't have that information yet. Usually by this time of year they do know that, and they can start scheduling these projects for the various towns that they engage. But Henry didn't think we were going to have that information until probably the end of June or early July at this point. So,
Okay, so then that's just the potential fee schedule for that.
right, so
Yeah.
they can't devote resources to something they're not being compensated for.
Yeah.
So they're kind of working that process.
Okay,
but Jim, as far as the road committee, we can definitely reminder to make sure that we get something on to get a proper committee and wording taken care of so that we can get that put in there and get it up on the board. Obviously we already have one, or we have the potential of having one this year. I don't know, I'm not sure if we have any spots open. We would have to see with the current board or the current committee who's serving, but it sounds like with the recommendation from Chairman Shomloffel, as well as what you read, that we may not be able to legally have two members of the planning board on there. So we may have to look at replacing that with another member of the community, and maybe just be a general member of the community, not associated with roads.
I
So,
think you're okay with an advisory board, but the way this thing reads, you could have 4 committees. Peter would be on all 4 of them. After that, it could be all different, you haven't got enough people on the planning board to come up with 8. But I mean, each one of these articles could have a committee. If you read it literally.
oh no, I understand,
don't
yeah.
think that's the intent. The intent was to have one committee.
One committee that handles the two pieces of funding, yes.
But the term, is it a 1-year appointment?
Well, I think we had done, we even went to 3, and we swore them in.
See, the problem I have with this thing,
Yeah.
at the last town meeting, the deliberative session, when this was tacked on, this was something that was not on the warrant. It wasn't germane, and quite frankly, I think it should have been ruled out of order, because you can't bring something to a town meeting that you haven't warned the public of. You told them you're gonna have an article to rebuild roads, but you didn't tell them you're gonna put a whole committee together either. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. To be honest, the only reason we put it on there is we were trying to be proactive so that we didn't have someone tack it on again at this year. That's the only reason we put it back on, because we figured someone was gonna stand up and tack the road committee back on, so we left the wording as it was for the prior year.
I would suggest we get rid of the whole thing and develop a road committee. And the only other comment I have is, you don't need people that know how to build roads. You need citizens who drive on the roads of all different types. So I'm not saying you should have a committee of 100 or something, but we don't have to have road engineers and people that are in construction. It's good to have them available, but I think you need to have ordinary people on it too. And I'm not volunteering.
You don't want one more hat? All right, yeah, we'll take a look at it, Jim, thank you.
Okay, and you will look at Wilson Mill Road.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
John, can I make another comment?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Unless the town has legal counsel telling it that there cannot be 2 members of the planning board on the road committee, then I think there should be 2 members of the planning board on the road committee.
Okay,
And otherwise, I would say that the entire, if there can't be 2, perhaps the entire warrant is invalid.
I think so.
all right, thank you, John.
Good evening.
Good night.
Good evening,
gentlemen.
Can you run that by council to take a look at that?
I would say at this point,
Yeah.
it is what it is to the end of this year, and then we'll form a road committee at the end of next. Like I said, it's, because I believe council looks over everything prior to,
Mhm.
so I think we're fine for the year, but then we can adjust it with the actual creation of a true road committee on warrant
Okay.
next year, its own warrant article. It can be abolish all prior
Yeah,
road
We
committees.
have to do that, abolish, because I did swear in all
Yeah.
the members for 3-year terms.
Yeah. But we can do it, abolish all prior road committees and establish a new road committee consisting of X, Y, and Z.
Okay, alright. Sounds good, yes.
Would it pay to get these members up on the website sooner rather than later if Jim's bringing up right to know laws?
So, we have a lot of little committees that don't have their own webpage. We can certainly put a directory up there. We're not obligated to put anything on the website, quite frankly. I mean, as long as it's available for public view. It's nice if you can get to it. Look around. We have limited resources in this town. We're lucky that we have hired somebody that has some experience with websites that we're hoping to utilize to improve the website. And we've already made small changes and intend to make more. But it's just a matter of time and resources. And, it's that simple.
If we have copies of the road committee's meeting minutes,
So, well, that's the other thing that.
I was gonna say, even we can tack them up with the
So we
select
have-
boards.
So the recommendations of the road committee constitute their minutes. So we have the 2020 road committee recommendations, we have the 2021 road committee recommendations. That's the minutes of those meetings that they held.
Alright.
It's that simple.
All right, can we
So-
post those, even the posted
Oh,
with the
sure.
select board minutes, I'm
Sure.
fine with
I mean,
that.
those have been widely distributed already.
Right,
But if you want to get them up on the website somewhere, we'll figure out a place to put them.
I appreciate, thank you.
Yeah.
It's just, like I said, if it really came down to it, that just covers us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's some clarity
Yeah.
for people. Alright. So then on to our discussion regarding HB 111, limiting the immunity of public officials.
So we received, I know Scott had some stuff, but we've received, it's one of those New Hampshire Municipal Association sent out. So if you don't mind me taking a little bit of time and reading this.
Fine.
So it says, contact your representatives today, local government at risk. As recent articles in our legislative bulletins demonstrate, the anti-local government streak that we have been noticing since the beginning of the year has now emerged as a broad movement. In recent weeks, House committees have voted to support bills that do the following. Eliminate the immunity that has been allowed local officials for centuries to make good faith, discretionary decisions without fear of liability. Impose fines, damages, and attorney fees on municipal governments for inadvertently adopting regulations that are determined to be preempted by state law. Amend the state constitution to impose a 2% cap on property tax increases in every municipality, and strip city and town councils of ordinance authority they have enjoyed since at least 1846. And while these are the most extreme examples, they are not the only ones. House committees have also supported or very narrowly opposed bills that would impose statewide zoning mandates, micromanage local budget processes, and pile new right-to-know law obligations on municipalities. The number and severity of the attacks on local government this year are cause for serious alarm. We have seen nothing like it for many years, if ever. We believe local officials need to take action before it is too late. Here are some steps that will help. Talk to your representatives. The next House session will be held April 7th through the 9th. We strongly recommend inviting your legislative delegation to your next select board, council, or board of aldermen meeting and having a discussion about the relationship between state and local government. Historically, the state and municipalities have worked as partners, not as enemies, and we need to return to that. The attitude that the state needs to admonish, threaten, or punish local government is troubling and unproductive. Advocate for defeating anti-local government bills. The worst of these bills are identified below. We will send a complete list with clear instructions on how to vote before the next House session, scheduled for April 7th. Once you receive it, please provide it to your representative and ask them to follow it. Talk to your senators. You will notice that all the bills discussed here are House bills. Nothing like this is happening in the Senate. At least some of these bills are likely to pass the House and will need to rely on the Senate to kill them. The more local officials can foster good relations with their senators, the better positioned we will be to defeat the bills that make it through the House. We are already letting senators know about the legislation that may be headed their way. We encourage you to do the same. The top priorities. Please talk to your representatives as soon as possible about the following bills, which are the most dangerous of the lot. Please urge them to kill all of these bills. HB 111, Municipal Immunity. We wrote about this bill in Legislative Bulletin number 10 and in Legislative Bulletin number 12. As we said there, this is one of the most alarming bills we have ever seen. It is a direct attack on local government operations written primarily by an out-of-state libertarian organization. It would eliminate most, if not all, of the immunities that protect municipal employees and officials from liability for good faith actions taken in the performance of their duties. If the bill passes, every action a local official or employee takes that subsequently is determined to have violated some law or a previously unarticulated constitutional right would be the basis for a lawsuit, requiring the municipality to pay damages and attorney's fees, and subjecting the individual employee to termination. This would be true even if the person acted in good faith, or the state of the law was so unclear that he or she could not reasonably or otherwise have been expected to know whether his or her conduct was lawful. Although these concerns were presented in the House Judiciary Committee, the committee voted 19-2 with no public discussion to recommend the bill. HB 307, fines for gun regulations. This bill would impose a fine of at least $500 plus liquidated damages of $10,000 plus attorney fees on any municipality that tries to regulate firearms in any manner, including restricting the discharge of firearms on municipal property. Basically means we couldn't stop someone from going to the town field and using it for target practice. I think we actually have a rule that says they can't.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
adopting a policy that, for example, prohibits target shooting on a town-owned athletic field or in a town cemetery would subject the municipality to these financial penalties. The penalties would apply even though the legislative or governing body believed in good faith that it had authority to enact the regulation, and even if the town attorney advised that it was legal to do so. This is unprecedented. We know of no state law that punishes municipalities for innocently enacting an ordinance or regulation that turns out to be preempted by state law. This is not how the state treats its political subdivisions, which are governed by volunteers who are rarely legal experts. Nevertheless, the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee reported the bill as ought to pass by an 11-9 vote. CACR 9, Constitutional Tax Cap. This bill would starve municipalities of revenue by prohibiting them from raising property taxes by more than 2% in any year. The limit shall be based on the actual tax of the previous year and not the rate. Thus, if a large industrial facility moves into town, bringing with it a huge increase in the property tax base, but also a significant increase in infrastructure costs, the town could not accept the natural increase in tax revenue and use it to offset the increased costs, even though the taxes paid by all other taxpayers would decline. It would simply have to let the increased costs gradually eat up its limited revenue and continually cut the services it can provide. Citizens in every municipality already have the option to adopt a tax cap if they choose. They do not need the state telling them they can't vote to increase their own tax revenue. We see bills like this almost every year, and they rarely get more than 1 or 2 votes in committee. This year, however, the Municipal and County Government Committee voted the bill ought to pass 10-9. HB 439, City Council Powers. This bill repeals the authority of city and town councils and boards of aldermen to adopt ordinances which may seem for the well-being of the city. This authority has been in statute for at least 175 years as a recognition that the enabling statute cannot possibly contemplate every matter that will warrant local regulation. As cities encounter issues beyond the places of military parade and rendezvous, and licensing and regulating butchers, petty grocers, and hucksters, peddlers, hawkers, and common victuallers, the statute has given them flexibility to regulate those matters. To our knowledge, the law has never been controversial, but the Municipal and County Government Committee voted 10-9 to recommend this bill, repealing it as ought to pass. Again, they'll send a complete list next week of the many municipal bills, including these that need attention.
Thank you, John. I wonder what's changed.
Oops, I'm sorry.
I wonder what's like driving this forward, like the drastic shift.
So what it is, it's a libertarian party, and what they're doing is, it sounds really weird because they want to limit taxing and also limit the control of the government on the taxpayer. So if you notice, it takes the power away from the town to regulate the safety and running of the town.
But
So
then gives
it's-
it to the state.
No,
Right?
it doesn't give it to anybody, really. What it does is it just gets rid of it completely. So it's the libertarians in general, which within certain things I'm fine with. They want smaller government,
Yeah,
which within reason makes sense. Smaller government, like I don't want, but what's funny is they want smaller government by, like you said, giving the state the control to regulate or tell you that you can't regulate the town. So it's giving all the power to the state in taking the power away from the town. But then no one has the power unless another bill is put in.
yeah,
You know, so it's basically like saying, like, you want in a town, on the town roads, we say our speed limit is 30 miles per hour unless otherwise posted.
yeah,
And you post that as you come into town. In the town of New Ipswich, on all town roads, unless otherwise posted, speed limit is 30 miles per hour. Well, then the state can come in. They're saying the state would come in and go, you cannot tell people how fast to drive on your town roads. And they go, well, who does? Nobody. So the state doesn't
Kinda
have the
creates
power.
like a vacuum. of
Right. The
sorts.
state doesn't have the power to do it
Yeah.
either. But they can do it on the state roads. But they've taken the power away. So there's nobody overseeing that section.
Mhm.
So that example you used of roads.
Uh-huh.
But where do you see this being implemented in these 3 bills or 4 bills? That
Well, the
read?
fourth one I don't think affects us too much because it's more for city council powers and aldermen. I don't think it affects us. But it's a matter of if it goes in anything, it's our people have to apply for permits for hawking licenses and stuff like that. And it would, if it goes to us, if I'm reading it right, it takes that power away from us. Someone comes in, they're supposed to apply to drive around town, and then we can actually post on the website or on Facebook or whatever in the newspaper, hey, someone came in and applied for a license, everything's legal, but you may have someone drive in your driveway, don't freak out, it's this person who has a license, and if you ask, they have to produce it. Well, they're saying, nope, they don't have to do that anymore. But so the municipal immunity basically means that if we sit here and make a decision and we check with town council and it seems fine and we're not doing it maliciously, we feel that this is the right thing to do, whether it be for the town or in a ruling, whether it be the planning board, the zoning board, anyone like that makes a decision in what they feel is the right thing to do. If someone then comes back at you and says, nope, you broke this law by doing it, even though it's some weird way of interpreting it or whatever, but a judge could rule that way. Not only could the town have to pay, but you could have to pay, and if it's a town employee, they could be fired from their job for what they're supposed to do. You know, so for example, if a police officer sees someone doing something that they feel is completely unsafe, there's something wrong, and they detain that person because they feel it's for the safety of that person and for the town. That person can then sue them for wrongful imprisonment. And normally it'd be, hey, you know, it was in the performance of his duties. There's nothing, not anymore. They
With
could
this,
sue it
if it passes.
if it passes.
And,
The police officer could lose their job, they could be sued personally, and the town would be sued for that one. The gun regulations, that's the one, if we, like I said, they're saying that if we say we don't want people shooting guns off at the playground for target practice, the state's going, nope, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And then the
I
last
agree with
one,
These two.
but
Yeah, I mean, I focus mostly on, House Bill 111.
yeah,
Because of, that has far-reaching implications for all of us, quite frankly. I mean, more detrimental to the police department than anybody, because of the type of interaction that they have with people. I think it opens them up to a lot of scrutiny and potential liability unnecessarily. you already have a situation where they are performing a very difficult job. I think there is no denying that. They were put in situations that the rest of us will never experience in our life, and we're asking them to be able to, you know, execute flawlessly all the time. And even that doesn't necessarily prevent them from having a lawsuit launched against them. And the town is liable too. So it's not only taking away the individual official or employee's immunity, it is taking away the town's immunity. So in that situation, I mean, I can envision that, one, it's gonna open us up to a lot more litigation for probably some completely silly reasons at times. But there are people out there that will take this door that's being opened for them and exploit it. My guess is that every city and town in New Hampshire is gonna have to raise its legal budget to defend itself. And for those things where our liability insurance might cover us as employees or officials, our insurance premiums are gonna go up to cover the additional expenses. I mean, this isn't just kind of a what if, something happens or somebody decides to sue. Just that risk that's out there is gonna force us to increase our legal budget, and undoubtedly, our insurance carrier is gonna, increase premiums to cover the potential liability that this is gonna cause for all municipalities in the state of New Hampshire. So there's a lot of negative things that can come out of this. When you get into the specifics for the police department, although again, it's gonna have some ripple effect into other town positions as well, but maybe not to the same extent, is who wants to do a job where they're opening up themselves to personal liability to the point where somebody can come and take your house? I mean, who would want to do that job? Who would want to risk everything that they've worked for to perform a job that has a high likelihood relative to other positions of being sued, and being sued personally, not to mention the town as the employer would be carried along with that. It is just a situation where, just in the environment in this country right now, getting people to pursue a career in law enforcement is getting more and more difficult. Nobody wants to do it just because of all the other issues that are going on and the scrutiny that they're under. Obviously there are a lot of bad apples out there. I shouldn't say a lot. There's a small number of bad apples out there, relatively speaking. That make, life miserable for the other 90% that come in and do that job every day without incident. My frustration with this is, what has ever happened in New Hampshire that's driving, that's motivating this bill? Do we have a big, abuse of power or unnecessary force type of situations in New Hampshire? I don't think we do.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what was interesting about it, because was it Colorado that has a similar bill that passed, right?
Yep. And they've got their
I haven't had enough time to do all the
Yeah.
research.
but a bunch of their police officers either left the state or retired.
And
Because it's the equivalent, the easiest way to put it to somewhat apples to apples, it's, you would have your police department, or we would have to have malpractice insurance for our police department.
exactly.
Is really what it comes down to. This is why,
Well, and
This is why
where I
in
was
you-
going with
yeah.
that was, we had that, unfortunately there's the shooting in the store,
mm-hmm,
and that was in Colorado.
right,
And instead of the police shooting to kill, they shot him in the leg and injured him, instead of doing that, going to that next level.
right.
So I don't know.
And so basically that guy can sue the police department for his injuries, his medical bills, pain and suffering, the whole deal, instead of,
Yeah.
So I don't read that way.
But that's
Like,
what
to me,
that's
like-
what this is saying.
I feel like the intent was just to kind of make it, and I don't know, because
Yeah.
like I said, I haven't, looked at enough of it or even spoken to the other reps that introduced it, like to find out what their intent is.
Well, The-
But I think it's just to take, like in that aspect, the judge, jury, executioner in that moment, and it almost proved that there is a choice. You know what I mean?
But-
Like it's either
And,
and I don't know, like I'm not speaking
so,
one way.
and, I certainly don't wanna speak for, our police department or any police
Mhm.
department necessarily. They're the experts in what they do, not me. However, knowing what I do know, is you're asking them, and that's a situation, an officer got killed in that most recent issue in Colorado. He got killed. He was basically, ambushed and assassinated by this gentleman.
Mhm.
And he was the first one on the scene. The issue I have is there's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking over what police officers do. Now, they were able to take this guy into custody alive. Obviously, he had been injured or shot somehow because he was bleeding. You could see it on the news. And I don't think that any police officer takes any joy in taking somebody's life. It's awful hard for me, though, to sit there and say, oh, he could have done it differently. Instead of shooting and killing that guy, he could have shot him in the leg and just incapacitated him until he could be apprehended and taken into custody. If you have an individual, and that guy had a long gun, I mean, enough that Joe Biden is now using this incident to go off and try to ban assault rifles based on this incident. So that guy had a long gun. And you're asking a police officer with a long gun pointed at him to sit there and consider all the options. Do I shoot him in the leg? Do I shoot him in the head to kill him? What do I do? And for us to come in after the fact and try to question how he went about his duties that day, because, okay, he incapacitated him in this time and it worked out okay. This guy's gonna end up going to jail, going to trial, he's gonna have justice served another way, versus somebody who felt their life was in danger enough, they had no choice but to kill him, to take a shot that killed that individual. Who are we, and this is the frustration that I have, who are we to judge what was going through the officer's mind, what was going through the perpetrator's mind, and what he was gonna do next? And you're making a judgment call. And for people to come in after the fact and Monday morning quarterback some of these incidents, honestly, you just have to listen to some of the stories and some of the situations that police officers go through. Our own department in a town with less than 6,000 people in it. I don't think people appreciate the types of incidents and the type of stress and danger, and it's true life and death danger that they run into in this town every day, and nobody will believe it. Oh no, this is a small town, New Hampshire, that doesn't happen. Baloney. I can tell you stories. I have, friends that worked on the Hollis Police Force, the Brookline
Right.
Police Force, the Pembroke Police Force. You want to hear stories? I mean, you want to see bullet holes in cruisers? Don't, that's what the job entails. Not every day. I don't care if that happens once a year. That's a stressful situation. And legislation like this, that it's just designed to punish them.
Yeah.
That's all it's designed to do.
And-
This isn't going to change anything except that, and we've already seen it again in the environment that's been created the last few years, where police officers are second guessing whether they should even get involved in the situation because they're afraid of being scrutinized, criticized, whatever it may be. So they'd rather just walk away because I was telling Chief Carpenter exactly something I saw on the news one night. This was probably 4 or 5 months ago when everybody was burning down every major city in this country, and this was a video of New York City, and there's two guys shooting at each other on the sidewalk, and a police cruiser rolls right by and didn't even stop. And why? because I'm sure the officer or two officers that were on that car looked at that situation and said, why are we gonna get engaged in that? Why? Because if we do, somebody is gonna tell us that we used excessive force, that we, didn't handle it right, so they just did a slow roll right by that whole incident on camera.
Mhm.
Because that's the environment that's created, and who can blame them?
So
Who can blame them?
the history, I don't know how much you know of the history of when they bring up the Libertarians. So several years ago, the Libertarian Party got together and they kind of earmarked a few states that they said, okay, we're going to, take the state. And there was, I think, New Hampshire was one. I think Colorado was one. There was another one out in the Midwest. And so they picked these things. They said, okay, we want as many libertarians as possible to move, and they were going to pick a state. Well, New Hampshire won, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Okay, so there has been a huge influx of libertarian people. If you haven't noticed on our ballots and such, every year there's more and more libertarians. Okay, now some of them don't run as libertarian, and then you find out they are. Okay, some of them are honest enough to go ahead and put themselves on as a libertarian. But if they go on as a libertarian, they have to pay all their own money. If you run for either Democrat or Republican, the state has to give you some money. You can't run, but if you run independent or third party, you don't get party money. So they'll run as either a Democrat or a Republican, normally Republican, because of what their platform is, and then they do what they want. So what they're trying to do is, basically their whole plan is start with one state and expand. And the states they picked were ones that are influential in the primaries every year or every 4 years. So that's why they were looking at Colorado, California, New Hampshire, these states, because they're ones that are influential every year when the presidential primary comes up. So what they're trying to do is take a state, turn it into a libertarian state, and then expand out. And they're doing it from everything from the town governance up to the state house. That's what they're trying to do. So if you look at all these bills or stuff like that, it's this back to again, small government, take the power away so that because like Scott said, if the police are afraid to perform their job because they're afraid to lose their house, they're not going to perform their job. They're not even going to get into law enforcement, or they're going to go, I'm out. I'm not doing it. Sorry. That's, so they'll leave you alone, and you can do whatever you want on your property, even though it might endanger your neighbors. You do what you want in the center of town, even though it might endanger people, because the policemen aren't going to step in there. The town isn't going to step in because we're going to be sued. So that's the issue. If you look at couple easy articles to read about Libertarian Party and such.
Yeah.
But
well,
it's
all things that resonate, small government, keeping your nose off your other people's property.
Yeah.
But then I do understand the necessity to have some type of ordinances or an effective law enforcement at the same time. But when I read through it, it just seemed like a course correction and maybe just trying to go a drastic way one way, just to keep the conversation going about just looking at how we've done things in municipal government.
it's not a conversation starter. It's a conversation ender. Is what they're not trying to. Oh, if we bring
That's
this
what I
out,
feel
we'll.
that's a drastic or dramatic response to it, because it's not like the sky's going to necessarily fall.
Yeah, before I was gonna ask John something.
Mhm.
Who wrote that explanation of what these bills were?
The New Hampshire Municipal Association.
Which you'll get emails from them.
You get
too.
emails and we get.
I still have
correspondence.
a folder that they get shuffled to on me. I got this like mystery folder of
It's
emails
other.
I can't
Yeah, you get
find.
focus and other. You click over on other, and they're all there.
So did either of you read HB 111?
Not completely. I've read some of it.
I did
It's
say.
like it's pretty hard to understand.
Oh yeah, well
And
they
to
do it
come
on
up with
purpose.
such an explanation like this is.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's how it is with zoning regulations too.
Yeah,
Like, where does the rubber meet the road?
yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
That's why.
Yeah, so Chief Carpenter sent me over a press release that the New Hampshire Associations of Chiefs of Police put out. And this was in response, a similar bill was passed by the U.S. House of Representatives, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, on March 4th. And this was in response to that, but it's applicable to HB 111 as well. And I just want to read a couple of experts here that I think, hit home here for us. And it says, the New Hampshire Association of Chiefs of Police has consistently denounced any efforts to eliminate qualified immunity for police officers, not only nationwide, but right here in New Hampshire. Calls to eliminate qualified immunity does not represent a constructive path forward when discussing police reform measures. In fact, such efforts would most certainly have far-reaching injurious effects on the policing profession's ability to serve and protect communities, including the recruitment, hiring, and retaining of highly qualified individuals willing to perform the very challenging and difficult duties expected of them. And it says qualified immunity shields all government workers, not just police. It says, as an organization comprised of police executives, the New Hampshire Association of Chiefs of Police has consistently agreed that there are areas where the policing profession needs reform and where working in collaboration and unison with colleagues, constituents, and elected officials is prudent in order to recommend and develop meaningful solutions. Such areas of policing include, but are not limited to, disciplinary procedures, early warning systems, hiring practices, training and education standards, and use of force policies. And I just want to add, in my 30 years involved in municipal government, one of the things that I have been consistently told over and over is that the best way to avoid situations where people are talking about abuse of power or excessive force, that sort of thing, is education. The higher the level of education that police officers have, the trend for complaints against them, etc., goes down. I would much rather see legislation that says we're going to be funding more education for police officers, etc., rather than taking away their immunity. I mean, what purpose does that serve other than to punish them? How does that benefit anybody? It doesn't. They need to invest everything that they just said right there. There are things that need to be done. There are investments that need to be made, but taking away their immunity, nothing good comes of that whatsoever, and why it's even being considered other than to punish them.
I don't know,
Not to mention the rest of
when
us
I
at the
read it,
same
it didn't
time.
seem like it was like a punishment, but just like a leveling of the playing field. Like where you're not dealing with some like people that are beyond reproach, like for their actions.
So the justice system, and we're seeing it right now. We're seeing it play out in the George Floyd situation. The police are not immune from being arrested and going through the justice system and not being convicted. I mean, there have in the last handful of years, there have been high-profile cases where the police were held to account. They were arrested, they were terminated from their jobs, they went to trial. Some of them were exonerated, some of them were convicted.
This is with that. What was it called? Qualified immunity.
That's with
Yes, that's
that-
with
That's
qualified.
with that. That doesn't shield them from any accusation.
No.
So it doesn't
Yeah.
shield them from anything that's considered criminal behavior.
Yeah.
All that does is prevent them from losing, everything that they own, and everything that they've saved for, as a result of that. And again, I mean, though not to their level, I mean, this affects me as a town administrator as well. All right?
Does it affect us?
Yes.
It absolutely does.
Yeah, like I said, someone could sue the town and sue, right now, if someone sues the town, we're listed as a selectman. But we're covered under the town. With this, they could sue the town and Jason Somro as an individual citizen of the United States. So they could sue you.
Only because I'm selectman.
Well, because you're a part of the decision.
Right.
And I didn't
So-
quite read it that way, but, you know, a lot of this has,
The very little bit that I read, that's how I
Yeah.
looked at it. I was like, so if somebody's mad at me for something else,
Or
and they slip on the front steps there, and they want to sue, they could also just pull me as an individual and say,
yeah, because it's any decision you make. Because if you said, well, the town offices were closed, like no one was here, it was an emergency, like we closed the town offices.
yeah,
But your decision was not to have the steps salted during a storm emergency.
yeah.
when,
However, it
when the
might
town
play
office
out.
when the town office is closed completely. So we told them not to concentrate on the steps of the town office. They could sue the town office, and they could sue Jason Somro, Sean Talbot, and John Beazer personally.
Or just one of us.
Yep.
That's
They
just
could. That's it. They
the
could
way
sue-
that I read it. That's how
Yeah,
it kind of
yeah.
sounded like. This
Yeah.
is crazy. Who would ever sign up for this? I mean, what's our grand salary? Oh, 0?
Yeah. So it's yeah.
1,500, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a stipend.
Yeah,
not
yeah,
really a
yeah,
salary.
not a salary, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
but-
so that's and that's the deal is that it takes anybody, and that's on any committee in town.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
You know,
that's
that any committee, any board, any employee of the town, that could be the plow driver. So right now, for example, our plow drivers. Okay? He's driving down the road, someone sticks out a little too far at one of the intersections, he clips them. Right now, that's covered. Plow driver's covered through the town, no issues. Not anymore. That plow driver is now could be personally liable
Yep.
for that person for the rest of their life. They could take that man's house because he clipped the front of a car.
I gotta. Sean, you've been saying like it seems like there's gotta be another side to this.
Yeah, yeah.
And I gotta agree with you, but I wonder if it's kind of like setting up the road committee here, and then all of a sudden it was all done in good faith and
Right. Well, they didn't.
logically and reasonably it seems, but
They didn't
they
pick
can
my.
be-
Yeah, they didn't pick my road. I hit a pothole. My neck hurts now.
well, no. What I'm saying is that may not the intent of the select board in filling out the warrant article saying there needs to be a road committee,
Right.
This was intended to address something, and it turns out there's people saying, "Hey,
Right. There was an
that's
issue
not that's not working right, and that ain't right." Well, I wonder if these authors of HP 111 understand
with it. Oh, they
that
did.
it's talking about Sean Talbot is no longer exempt from. It could be,
No, they
and I'm
could-
not
I
asking you
believe-
guys
I
if it
believe that it
is.
could be, but then at the same time,
Yeah,
it would make you do your job better, or more seriously, or really consider things before we, and I'm not saying that it
Well,
really
yeah.
it doesn't. I don't know what situations push this. That's why I'd like to hear more, from, what the intent of this is, because all of these things sound plausible, but it's like the whole bottom drops out, and I hesitate to believe that that's what this would cause.
That's what,
The
Sean.
thing
That's
is
the thing
what-
is that's exactly what it would
how
cause.
So-
who would come to be on the select board, or a
Well,
town
well,
administrator,
well,
or any of the jobs?
But honestly,
Like,
this,
if-
this is what this does, is who would want to volunteer to be a selectman if they're going to open themselves up
So
to
now,
personal liability? Nobody.
there's no town governance. It's ruled. Each man has his own kingdom. That's what
Well,
liberty.
and I think it's kind of interesting. Well,
Sean,
because
see, well,
I say that. I say
Sean,
this to
seriously?
I
I mean,
say-
come
I
on.
s- no. Hey, I say this to people because they make statements like this to me. And I say, "What do you want to do? Go back to the wild, wild west?"
You
And
don't want to do that.
is this the wild, wild west like
That's-
coming back to us?
that's
like,
what-
where it's all self-governance.
That's
and-
what they want. Basically, each man could stand there, you know, and oh, you're too close to my property.
Yeah.
You know, don't put your foot over. Hey, I'm here to, you know, talk to. No, and that's the whole deal. Who would want to be a police officer? Who would want to be a town selectman? Who would want to be on any board or committee in town?
Well, because if it's the way that you're saying, then it pretty much gets rid of the whole system.
Zero government,
Like
small
from-
government.
Yeah.
that's their whole
But the
agenda.
thing is, a
Yeah.
libertarian is not an anarchist. Although to some people it may seem like they flirt with it a little bit. They're not an anarchist.
I'm not saying
to
they're
your point of what was their intent. I think it really doesn't matter what their intent was. They may have had the noblest of intentions. What matters is how it's interpreted, and how the state and what do you say, the justice system interprets this kind of wording. That's the bottom line that matters.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter if they had a heart of gold
Yeah.
when they wrote it.
Yeah, and honestly, when it comes to the police officers, as I said, I think the justice system has already shown us that it works. So if there's an officer that has done something terrible, he's held to account. He goes through a process. A jury of his peers looks at the evidence and makes a decision on whether to convict them or acquit them. And that's going on right now. I mean, look at the officer in the George Floyd case, the 4 officers down in Philadelphia that were arrested because a guy died in the back of their prison van. They ended up being exonerated, but their lives were destroyed, their careers were destroyed, and in the end, they were found not guilty of anything. Too late. Your life's gone. Your career path is gone, and so there's 2 sides to this story, and I think we've seen police officers do some really terrible things and make very poor decisions, and they're held to account. I don't think the police officers that I've been acquainted with throughout my life, they don't like bad police officers either. They really don't. And when they have one in their ranks, they try to encourage them to leave. And because they don't want to be around them, they don't feel safe around them.
Mhm.
So I think to do this, and like I said, this not only affects the police department, it affects all of us. It seems to me to be an overzealous knee-jerk reaction to current events. And I'm not saying, and nor is the New Hampshire Association of Chiefs of Police saying that we shouldn't do anything. They're saying, yes, there are reforms. And I think law enforcement throughout history has always looked at better ways of doing things. I think it's kind of a process of continual improvement in how they approach things and adapt, because the world changes, society changes, and they try to adapt and find new ways to solve problems and hopefully save lives in the process. And I don't think they get enough credit for policing themselves. I think everybody thinks that they're not paying attention. Now, certainly there are times where legislation has forced them to make changes, and that's necessary at times as well. But this to me just seems like, I mean, we will not see anybody wanting to become a police officer. You will not see anybody wanting to pursue this career.
You seem to be focusing on the law enforcement aspect.
Well,
I feel like there's more far-reaching than just the law enforcement.
Right, and that's what I say.
aspect.
That's why I brought up
the to is I would really like to find out where this is coming from, and I really think it's interesting. As a looking at people in society, that it's even gotten to this point, because there's known issues, right? With every step of municipal government, and you're trying to fix it, and it must be out of frustration where it's not translating that the local government is the community instead of the seal of the town. That's what people feel. There's this disconnection between the two, somehow. So, but it, like, I don't know, like, from what you guys are explaining, it sounds like crippling us at the local level puts it on the state and then possibly even the federal level, and nobody wants the federal, like, you don't want a national security service.
Well,
Right,
so,
because does it create like a different
so,
thing? Like what's the map that these people intended for? Like what's the creation? You know, like what's the fix?
So,
I don't think-
I mean, HB 111 is, if you read it, is targeted mostly to state agencies, state employees, that sort of thing, is the way it reads.
Mm-hmm.
But it also says, you know, the other political subdivisions in which are municipalities, and therefore their employees and their officials are also wrapped up in this. And, you know, even the state police today, you know, they're shorthanded, they're having trouble recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
We know almost every town around us is having trouble recruiting police officers. And it's not just the pay issue, I mean, I think that's part of it. The other part of it is, who wants to go into a profession where the media is constantly maligning them instead of, you know, praising them for some of the things they do on a day-to-day basis? And people don't even realize it. They don't even realize what they do. That's the sad part.
Well, that's what the news is. You know, Nicole and I sat to watch the news one night at 11, and within 15 minutes told, like, why are we doing this again? Because it's not like,
Oh, I agree.
you think that the world's ending. You know,
Right.
like it's, I don't know, you get depressed.
But
like,
unfortunately,
within,
there's
that's all it is the negative. Like, and it's not just the law enforcement, it's,
well, the scary part is it's that that agenda, if you will, and it is an agenda that gets the elected officials all genned up, and they feel that in order to stay in power and get a vote, they need to do something, and this is a way to show people that they're gonna address concerns that aren't really a big problem. It's just been manufactured into a big problem, and therefore they have to address it. And that's the problem that I have with all of this is, again, the number, and the reason I focus on the police for the most part in this particular situation is because they are the employees that are most likely to find themselves in situations where this is going to affect them. It's not likely that me sitting behind a desk is going to get into too much trouble. Not to say that I don't find it sometimes, but it's, you know, they're out there every day interacting with the public constantly. I mean, our police department, in a typical month, will get between 300 and 500 calls for service. So that's 300 to 500 interactions with the public that they have on a given month in a little town like this. And each one of those incidents constitute a potential liability situation for them and for us. And those are not small numbers, even for a town this size. And the number of calls for service here aren't that different from any of the other small towns in this area. They're busy. People don't appreciate how busy they are, and just I just think that you think we're having problems getting people to come work here now. I think this goes into effect. I can see an exodus. I think we potentially already have an exodus in motion. Somebody that just wants to get out of the profession, which we've discussed, because you know, they're looking at the risks and the scrutiny, and it's like it's a lose-lose for them. And we can't keep the town safe if we have, you know, the inability to attract people, or the people that stay, that are here, are afraid to do their job because of their, you know, the exposure to personal liability makes them ineffective. And they don't mean to be ineffective, they're just being practical. And it's self-preservation for them, to protect their families. I don't see how that possibly makes the public any safer. And yeah, are there things that they need to do? I believe so. And like I said, I would have been much happier if somebody came out with a bill saying, you know what we need to do for police reform is we need to do better training, we need to invest more in the right tools, the right tactics, whatever it may be. That's a bill you could get behind. One that strips them of their immunity, I don't see how that's helpful
Yeah.
and to solve the problems. It's just punitive, period.
Yeah, that's too bad. It's only 2 weeks till they go into session, and
Well, and the reason I wanted to bring it up is, you know, do we want to draft a response? Do we want to, I mean, honestly, I think this is important enough for all of us, not just the police department, that, you know, I would like to see us draft something that, you know, goes to our state senator, and our 2 state reps and the governor. And, you know, expresses what our concerns are. And, you know, this is as introduced. This may go through several amendments before it ever gets voted on. We have no idea yet. But, you know, maybe the end product will be something that's palatable. I don't know. But I think that the sooner we voice our concerns as a community, and I hope all New Hampshire communities are looking at this and doing the same thing we're doing right now, and you know, make it a point to make a stand on this. I mean, we see legislation all the time, and we read it, and we move on, and we don't comment on it, and we don't contact our reps. We just kind of, you know, like it or lump it, the sort of attitude. But I think this is important enough that I would, you know,
Well,
it's up to you guys, but I would like to see you take a stand.
I'd agree, you know, because, you know, if it is, you know, kind of like that, the bottom dropping out scenario that you and John, you know, feel that it is, like, nobody wants that.
Well, like I said, I understand, like, I mean, the police officer is probably the most, I think, if you look at it, police officer is going to be one of the most easily attacked in this. The second is this board right here. But I worry about because I briefly looked, it's basically any employee
Yeah,
that works for what they call a political subdivision of the state of New Hampshire, which is us. So I look as, okay, like the example I put, a plow truck driver.
Mhm.
Our guys are out plowing,
yeah,
and a car pulls over on the side of the road. You can't see it. It's snowing like a bastard out there. You don't get to see it. And that wing hits that car.
and that's where I don't understand, like, at that point, how does this change what happens next, where, you know, the insurances
Okay,
don't pick
so-
up already,
so-
and,
So our insurance could. But so what happens is they can go after anybody and everybody. It's the example of a civil trial versus case of a murder. The state can sue you or bring you up for charges on murder,
yeah,
and you can go to jail. That's all they can do, and they go, okay, that's it. But then you can do a civil trial, that's for damages.
yeah,
Okay, so that's basically what they can do is they can go, well, you know, my car was hit or I was hit by a plow truck.
yeah,
Okay, yes, our insurance pays. We have insurance for that. But then they can go, I want to go after him too. He was negligent.
yeah.
And we'll go, yeah, but we got you covered.
Yeah,
Nope,
but-
I want to go after John Doe, who was the negligent plow truck driver. Currently, they can't do that because he was operating as a function of his job for the town of New Ipswich.
Yeah, but like what you're saying is that just him sheerly being in the truck and not seeing the person would make him negligent. I'm trying to like it's not correlating. Like,
So
the
what I'm saying is,
example's not-
so he was performing his job.
yeah,
Everything was like it, and what it's saying is it can go after them even though they feel, and we know they were doing everything that they felt was right, that we felt was right, There's not supposed to be cars parked on the side of a road on 124 in a snowstorm. Okay? It's snowing. He is simply, or not 124, but say a town road, it is snowing. Okay?
Yeah.
So normally that would be covered. He was performing the duties of his job. He is covered as a town employee under the duties of his job in a regular thing. He wasn't driving 2 wheels off the road.
Yeah.
The wing hit the person. Okay?
This was simply, well, and then I just wanted to ask Sean Waffle, if he had any input, like as, you know, like a board member, since he's hanging in for the meeting with us. Did you have any thoughts, John?
I'm hanging in for another topic, but frankly, I don't really see that this will turn out to be much that a board or municipality could fight. I think in most cases, you would find someone who would claim in some way that the public official acted contrary to their duties in some way and would sue them in court anyhow.
Yeah, today they would have immunity though. So in other words, they would sue the town. They would sue the political subdivision, but they couldn't sue the individual personally and put their personal assets at risk. And I think that's really the difference.
I think if a person who was a claimant could find any minor technicality in the performance of that public official in their job, their lawyer would view that as an opportunity to sue them as an individual, because you're only covered for actions which are conducted discreetly and succinctly in accordance with your position. And that's just my thought. So.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, no, I think, you know, there's this warrant, you know, drafting, you know, a letter to send out, just a question, yeah. Yeah, I don't know how that would take place.
Well, I mean, I could try to draft something up, give you all the chance to review it, give your input, give your thoughts. I would like certainly my department heads to have some input as well, because it impacts them and their people.
Mm-hmm.
And see if we can come up with something that hopefully makes a point. And John may be right that you know, whatever we do or whatever we say may not change the outcome at all. But I would hate to miss an opportunity to provide input and then regret that we didn't when the outcome was such that we're all wondering why we're working for a municipality.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. Should we make a motion?
Motion to draft a response, particular to HB 111, so that we can contact our state senators, House, our representatives, as well as the governor.
Is there a second?
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I will get to work on that and hopefully have something to you by Monday.
Okay.
That'll be my goal, is to get something flushed out by Monday and give you a chance to review it before we meet on Tuesday.
Alright. Thank you, Scott.
And that gives us a week to find out more about this.
Yep.
I think it's,
More phone calls to make.
one of the comments was on these bills that are coming up was they've never seen anything like it. I think it's a reaction to the lockdowns and people's liberties being threatened, and they've elected people who are addressing that issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of bills on there that are very much leaning towards a libertarian side. You know, on the floor that I've, and I don't see all the bills, but just from what I've heard.
Yeah.
So, and then just to give you a heads up on the other piece that I have an issue with. So looking at CACR 9, the tax cap. So it says you can't raise taxes more than 2% year over year. Okay. But it just says municipalities. So it has nothing to do with any unfunded mandates that may come down. So for example, the increase in retirement. So if we try to give any sort of increases to employees, and then there's increases to retirement, which we know we're going to continue to see, you could have a 2% increase in the tax rate.
Yeah.
And the only way that can go on, looking through it, is you have to have a second, so you vote, but then there has to be another ballot question that basically states, you know, that the town approves an increase of over 2% in their taxes. It can't just be part of it's got to be very clearly written. So it can be part, but it's got to be very clearly written. So it's one of those things. They're only putting it on the municipalities.
Yeah.
There's nothing in
Yeah,
the
but
wording.
So it just makes it, if you, like, it looks like you need an over a 2% increase, then you'd have to state why
Right.
and what it's gonna fund, right?
But it has to be very clear, you know, that it could almost be like, yeah, we vote for the budget, but we don't vote for more than a 2% increase. So then what happens is you have to use your tax revenue differently. So it's you end up eating into any revenue that might fund other projects. You know, so you may, by the end of the year, you can't fund something.
Mm.
Like something that you were like, oh, well, we're going to do this. Oh, now there's a spending freeze. So because the revenues aren't there. So just, it's another one that's.
It's kind of like how Prop 2.5 works in Mass. The difference with Prop 2.5 is you can add new growth. So you can increase your budget 2.5% plus any new growth. So if the factory moved to town,
Right.
you could get that tax revenue and it adds to your budget without affecting your Prop 2.5 standing. And Prop 2.5 in Mass, the voters have the right to override it. So they can take it to the ballot and say, yes, we want a new school, or we want to make sure we fund the library or the
Right.
senior center, or whatever it may be, and they can do a 2.5 override, so you still have local control.
And that's basically what this is saying, is that, so you can't,
So
you
that
couldn't,
2% number though,
that two,
must have come from somewhere, and if it's 2.5 down in Massachusetts,
Yep.
that's only, it's still in the general
but it's,
area. Like, why is that like a point that people need to be alerted?
I don't
And
know,
like
but
an
what
extra,
but what they're saying is like, we
layer
can't,
put
we
on
can't
there.
break out.
Yeah,
So say we do our budget,
yeah,
okay, and then there's like 6 warrant articles. Those warrant articles all have to have wording in them that states that it's approved. Basically, there's this article, if approved, includes the override of a 2% increase.
yeah,
Because you can't say, well, it's only a 1.5 in the budget, and then we've got all these warrant articles. So the warrant articles is what put us over 2. No, if it puts you over 2, it has to be worded. So
yeah.
These are under consideration by legislature right now, so I wonder how much time we should give each one of these, because a
Right.
lot of them may not.
yeah, some of my, like I said, my only issue is that like I said, in that one, the other one, I don't know how much it'll get because it's everybody. It's from the state house down to the smallest town.
Yeah,
So that one may get some fight because it's going to be the state troopers and,
You're talking 111.
yeah, it's everybody. I mean, right, the janitor in the state house, the state trooper on the highway,
yeah,
the senator, the house, they're all liable. So that one may get a little more of a fight when it gets up there. But the other one bothers me because I said it only states. But I mean, well, so it's just something to look at when we get the full list and a little more breakdown. But it's just something. You can read them. You type in a Google search, they pop up,
Yep.
and kind of look at them a little bit. It is a little worrisome.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So you want
Okay.
to see what Mr. Shumloffel had is here for?
Yes. John. So we're on to old and new business.
I would like to know why I'm required to sign only original time cards for the person the town is calling an employee. And I'm asking this question in light of a number of things. And I'll start with Selectman Somro tonight talked about intent and good faith. I've not heard of any accusations of malfeasance here. I've heard the town administrator say that the town has limited resources and having to transport paper copies back and forth, whether by mail or another means, it takes up time and resources. I have planning board chair, I've not signed for postal service receipts. I've not had to sign bills from the Monadnock Ledger. I've not had to verify payments or bills from any of our service providers in the year and a half or so that I've been chair of the planning board. So I'm really curious is why this is. I mean, does the town administrator or another town official sign time cards for employees, for example, such as the land use clerk, for meetings that they attend as part of their work when a town official isn't there? This seems focused solely on one person that the town has decided that they want to classify as an employee, and it seemed particularly capricious and unnecessary.
All right, so let
I'd
me,
like to understand why.
okay, so first off, yes, all the time cards get signed. So all time cards get signed by the department heads, and if there is no department head, then I sign the time cards. Every single one of them. They all have a signature on them. And they're sitting right over here in a folder, manifest for the selectmen to sign every week. And the selectmen get to review those time cards as well. And they're all originals. They're not copies, they're not digital versions of time cards, etc. If you do not want to sign those time cards, I'd be glad to sign them for you. The only reason we're asking you to sign them is it's coming out of your budget. However, I certainly have the authority to sign any of those documents. And I'd be happy to do so if it's going to expedite it. And as far as the cost to, certify mail it, to you and certify mail it back, that is chump change compared to the amount of money that this whole process has cost us in my time. I'm the second highest paid employee in this town, so the number of hours that I've had to be involved over the last few months over this issue far outweighs the cost of a couple of certified mail transactions. Not to mention the money that we spent getting advice from town council, which was promptly ignored by you and your board, saying not to do this. You chose to go down this path despite the recommendation from town council, despite the desire of the Board of Selectmen, who ultimately have the financial responsibility of all budgets in this town. And we also got another opinion from the attorneys at the New Hampshire Municipal Association, from Drummond and Woodson, who they subcontract out their labor consulting to. So I'm a bit flabbergasted
Well,
that,
Scott,
that,
we can
that we're
bring this
spending
back
so much
to,
time.
like, just bring it back to just the issue at hand right now of just the time cards.
No, but he also brought up that we deemed her an employee. We did not deem her employee. We were advised by council to put her as an employee because it could cause some serious tax issues if she was put in as a consultant, which she does not qualify as a consultant. So I believe Scott was addressing that.
Mhm.
But as far as the time card piece, the time cards, everyone does the same thing. They're all signed hard copy time cards.
Now, John, do you have the hard copy time card? Like, where are those? There must be
well, first of all, I don't have the hard copy time cards. And frankly, I find this surprising. You know, amongst the things in dealing with COVID, with the governor's emergency order and executive orders, even notaries public no longer have to be in person to verify signatures on original documents. Even that happens digitally. And frankly, with all due respect to the board and with the recommendations of council, these were not specific determinations that quoted laws that said this was prohibited. These were recommendations of council. And frankly, the planning board could have gone out and gotten its own counsel and gotten another lawyer to say that, yeah, maybe this isn't recommended, but it's not illegal. I don't have the original copies. I was sent digital copies. I believe I took those digital copies, I printed them out, I signed them, I imaged them, and I sent them back. So beyond that, I don't know what the administrator would do, but actually he's helped out in this case, is that he says he's happy to sign them. Now, does he want to sign the originals, or would he prefer to sign the digital copies?
Originals.
Okay, well then I'll ask that the originals be transported to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Alright, so we have to have that done by,
The sooner the better.
Yes.
You know, without a time card, we can't put it on the manifest and get it paid.
okay,
So the faster the better.
alright. So, energy audits,
So we do have the energy audits back on the 3 buildings, the fire station, this building, and the DPW and Green Center. It's about 200 pages of reading, which I haven't had the time to digest, but I hope to have a synopsis for you by next week, and I will email you electronic copies of those if you are trying to get to sleep some night. And
Those are the ones, they were attached with the emails, correct?
yeah, you actually might have gotten them because Margaret copied you in
Okay.
place of Dave
Okay.
on the distribution.
Right.
But I will get them out to you so you can read them as well. I talked to, so the other piece of this is Doug Wade. So Doug Wade is also taking these energy audit findings and is going to be making recommendations on what to do with the heating and ventilation systems in these 3 buildings. I exchanged emails with Doug today. Margaret had already sent him copies of these, so he's already been digesting them. He and I are going to have a conversation on Thursday morning just to kind of see where we're at and where we're going. You know, my hope is that once we have these 2 pieces brought together, then we can make some decisions as far as what we want to do with the facilities, where we want to invest, and move forward.
I don't know, I'm only getting preliminary, word on the street type thing. I didn't get anything official, obviously,
Yeah.
any more than you have. But I heard that one of the recommendations Doug was leaning towards was to go to a pellet boiler at the fire station. So keep that in mind, and whether that's something you would
okay.
be on, because that's,
And
there's,
didn't he help the school get into that too?
yeah, the school did it.
Yeah.
There's normally some good rebates, or there were at the time. That's one of the things. That's what they use, is they use pellet boilers at all the schools.
Yeah,
So just, I'd have to see. To me, it just seems it may be overkill for that, but they may have different sizes. Obviously, I know they make them for households and things like that.
yeah.
But I heard that was a way he was leaning, so we'll have to see. So, because I know we originally thought about doing the propane piece, but it looks like, and I just don't know where on that property we're going to store a pellet silo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's my worry.
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yes.
then just the cost, I'm sure that comes with something like,
So,
Sounds like a
so
hefty
those
cost,
solutions
anyway.
are expensive. When I was in Wilton, we, in fact, Margaret did the energy audit for the Wilton Town Hall. And I'm not sure, it wasn't Doug, but somebody else came back with a proposal for a wood pellet system there. And again, there we were really landlocked, so it's where do you put the silo and the feeder into the furnace, and, you know, there were other issues, and it was pricey. I mean, honestly, we could replace the old steam boiler there for about $30,000. And the wood pellet system was gonna be $165,000.
And that's it, I just want,
So-
yeah, so we'll get some numbers, obviously, but I just, and like I said, my biggest issue really there is, like you said, space. I mean,
Yeah.
space is kind of at a premium everywhere around that building.
Yeah.
So, and even a small, I mean, you would basically have to, my guess is it would have to be raised high above the roof so that you could get it close to the building, so that you wouldn't lose square footage on the side of the building. That's just my thought, but
Yeah.
I don't know enough about them, you know. I've seen them at houses where it just feeds down to the basement and then up, you know. But I'd be looking at it, it'd be like me trying to put one on my house, you know.
Yeah,
It's gonna take a piece of real estate somewhere that's gonna feed a hole into my house, so, cause I don't have a basement, neither does that place, so. So we'll have to see, but I heard that was a way he was leaning, we'll have to see. But I just wanted to bring that up so it doesn't come as a shock of, wait, this is what we're talking about. But,
I also look forward to that email with the audit
Yeah.
from Margaret, and then also after your conversation with Doug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing, energy related, that came up is a representative from New Hampshire Stays stopped in yesterday. They have a program going on right now to retrofit interior lighting in buildings. So some of these fixtures can be replaced, and we probably wouldn't need as many because of the technology for like $10 a fixture.
I think these are all LEDs already.
I think, no, these ones are.
Yeah,
This-
these all
this
are.
one, but there are, you know,
Other ones, and then
other
I
ones
know,
in the building.
and then we talked about like the fire station and stuff like that too, so.
So, in any case, I, recommended to her that she reach out to me on when they could come in, and I'll get, Peter and Mark Hawkins involved, and they even have, she brought in a fixture that's designed for high bay environments like the DPW garage, and we were already talking about moving to LED lighting out there anyway. I just thought it'd be a good opportunity to have them give us a proposal and try to figure out what the cost would be. And, like most things, when, much like the street lights, you're looking at a 40 to 60% savings in electricity usage. And if we can get the fixtures for a very reasonable cost, it might be an investment that we might consider making. So hopefully we'll have that be developing in the next, weeks, months, with them.
Alright, good. Glad to hear it. Hopefully that ends up with a, significant energy savings, like we did with the streetlights.
Yep.
Like a project that pays for itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
And next on the list, you had inspection fees and adjustment.
basically, I left those on there. Those were some of the older, old new business items. You asked me to kind of leave some of these items on the list so we don't forget them.
Yeah.
So, I have talked to Peter a bit about the transfer station fees, and we're gonna try to take that list and simplify it a bit. And I think we need to have some discussion around that. He's concerned that if we don't explicitly state something on the list for a price, people start arguing with the guys at the transfer station, well, it's not on the list, why are you charging me $10 to dispose of it? So, we're gonna have to put some thought into how we kind of restructure that, simplify it, and not simplify it not only for the public, but simplify it for our guys that are, dealing with that, so, it's not quite as cumbersome as it is. And then the building inspection fees, I still have to, grab, information from, surrounding towns, just to get an idea of where they are, where we stand, and,
Didn't we get something from Rick?
we did, he made some small tweaks, but to be honest, we're not, most building departments try to generate enough revenue so they're covering their costs, especially their labor costs. So, you know, one of our land use people, you know, and Rick, you know, we want to cover those costs, and we're not doing that right now, not even close. But we also don't want our fees to be way out of whack with everybody else. But right now, we're on the low side compared to other towns by a pretty good margin, and I think it's worth taking a look at to, you know, the first when I did Rick's numbers, the way he proposed them, that was only going to result, and that assumes if our volume stays about where it is right now, that was only going to result in about a $4,000 to $5,000 revenue increase for the year. Honestly, I don't think that quite cuts it. I think we need to take another look at it. So I want to see how other towns are calculating their fees, because everybody seems to take a different approach, whether it's based on square footage or whatever. Yeah. And I also want to make sure that whatever we do is compatible with what we've already designed into the iWork software, so that we don't have to do a complete overhaul of that system, and that ends up costing us money to.
Yeah, because his last thing seemed to be kind of like, he raised prices on a lot of the one-offs, like the easy, like, you know, oh, a demolition permit's only this much now, and
No, it's $5 more.
right, it's $5 more, and oh, you're gonna do this, okay, and like, oh, you're pouring a pad for that's $5 more, instead of, like you said, kind of looking at the bigger ones and go, where's his work really coming in, you know? Because
Right.
like I said, oh, I'm pouring a pad for a hot tub. Oh, that's $5 more. Well, yeah, he's also not going out and really looking at those either.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
where his time's being spent, is that where we need to
Yeah.
recoup? You know.
So,
So I know he's looking for feedback, because I spoke with him
Yeah.
today, and he is, you know, so looking for something back from you. So I don't know if
Yeah.
you guys can, you know, get together and talk about that aspect.
yep.
Did you guys have a conversation about, like, regarding the phone system?
Yes. Well, that needs a lot of attention, quite frankly. And I want to look at our contract with Comcast, because I believe it was up. I think we had a 3-year commitment that was up in February, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it may be worth having some others come in and give us proposals. At the time, I think they got 1 or 2 other proposals, and Comcast was the cheapest. But you know, Tim doesn't like the phone system. You know, we don't even have, honestly, the tools here. Nobody here knows how to really manage the phone system. So I think a combination of getting a better understanding of what we have and how to use it might improve people's opinion of the phone system.
Yeah.
But
Well, even to make it more functional, so that, you know,
Yeah.
when people leave messages, like, they're able to be retrieved. Like, I'm not sure at what point,
So-
like, things get
well,
disheveled or.
well, we've had some turnover. You know, that hasn't helped, but, you know, certainly when I came here, there was nobody here that could tell me anything about the phone system other than that, yeah, we have it. We signed a contract. And, you know, people knew, you know, we get them their passwords that they could go in and, you know, do their own personal greeting for their voicemail account and things like that, and that's about the extent of what we know. I honestly have not delved into, you know, what the main greetings are, what the menu choices are, all of that. That probably all needs to be
No, yeah, it
to be looked
does.
at and scripted.
Yeah.
Well, just for example,
Yeah.
that phone, that light on that phone,
Yep.
has been flashing for over 3 years.
Yep.
There's a
And
message on that
nobody
one.
knows the password to that
Right.
phone. So we have to have Comcast, you know, kind of purge it for us and reset it. And
Yeah.
you know, that's the type of issues, but it does need attention for sure.
Okay. Is there any type of timeline that you could think of to, because each week I hear something about the phones and, like, even just the greetings part, you know, like, cause like when the office is closed, it says one thing and like, still references Lori,
Yep.
you know, and that seems like an easy fix, but I don't know, like, cause I don't have to deal with it, but if we could just at least fix the menu selections, make the, when the office is closed selections, similar to the ones when it's open, cause I
Mhm.
think those ones have been updated and changed. So there's two different greetings.
Well, there is, and
Yeah.
then there's you know, when the building is closed, like on Fridays, nobody can call me direct.
Yeah.
It goes right to voicemail,
Yep.
so you can't make a direct call
Hmm.
on Fridays, because it's got the way it's programmed is, well, if the office is closed, then why have the phone on the desk ring 3 or 4 times before it goes to voicemail? We'll just go right to voicemail and say the office is closed, but there are many of us that are here on Friday.
Yeah.
So it's a little frustrating that you don't have the option to pick up the phone. You know, you don't see it till you get your either, you know, email message, because it converts, you know, we're lucky we have a voice to text system, so we get the message text, you know, via email. And then you realize that your phone just rang 5 minutes ago, but you didn't hear it because, you know, it went right to voicemail.
Yeah.
And then you end up calling the person back. And if you're playing telephone tag with somebody, you have to give them your cell phone number, because if they try to call you back, they're gonna go back into that same loop again and go right to your voicemail again. So
Yeah.
you have to have them call your cell phone if they want to talk to you on Friday.
Who is able to fix this phone problem? That does not sound very fun at all.
I don't think it is gonna be fun, but, you know, we're gonna have to get Comcast to come in and,
Well, I mean, what
maybe
you're
get some-
describing as your typical Friday, trying to communicate with people and having to look at voice to text.
Oh, yeah,
Wow.
well, that's,
Oh. So Comcast might be able to help. Huh?
well, they will be able to help. It's a matter of getting them to actually engage, because their customer support is sketchy sometimes. So, but we'll see.
Really?
Well, I think, you know, it'd be, you know, really worthwhile, and not to, like, put it, you know, kind of move it up. You know, it's a primary, you know, look for the town, just like, you know, the webpage, even though we don't need
Yep.
to have it. You know, like, if it gets updated, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's important. You know, it's a communication point.
We'll put it on the list. Phones.
Did you have anything else?
I don't have anything else.
Just any progress or any answers from your peers on how we get rid of our real estate?
So, not as of yet. I'm gonna put
Okay.
a feeler out there on, you know, if anybody has used an auction house, which ones they'd recommend, and see what we can get back.
Okay.
And kind of reach out and see what's involved in getting somebody engaged to do that.
Okay. And then same thing for the garage.
I did talk to Chief One today about the old DPW garage, because they might have a few things in there. She didn't think they had a lot in there, and they would be able to find a place to relocate it to. So, but she said there's a lot of other stuff in there that past fire chiefs and other town employees have just kind of packed that building down there with all the surplus stuff that probably should have gone to the transfer station. And so she's going to take a look herself and see what they may have in there. But I think other town departments are probably going to have to decide, you know, what's in there and what we might want to dispose.
I just say
The
send Peter down there with the loader,
Yeah.
fill up the bucket, and drive it down to the transfer station.
Well, Peter is moving all the sand from down there to over here, so he's in the process of getting the sand off that lot. Salt will be next once the salt shed gets up. The contractor for the salt shed, it should be out here sometime soon. We're not exactly sure when. Peter's been touching base with them to mark out where the foundation blocks need to go, and then he'll start assembling those and get the salt shed up.
And something that popped into my head as you said the sand, and then it came into my head the other day when I was actually down there. Just have him already start thinking about for next winter where we're going to house sand for the residents when they're able to go fill up their buckets
Yep.
and stuff like that, just so that we, because I mean, this always seems to be fairly clear, but I don't want them. I don't want people to start going down there and go, well, there's rock here too. I could just get some of that. You know?
Well, yeah, I think it might be a situation where once we get the salt shed up, you know how a lot of material places or landscapers, they use some of those sim concrete blocks we're gonna use for the foundation for the salt shed, and they set up, you know, little
Yeah.
rows of material.
Yeah.
You can put sand in here, and you know they put bark mulch or whatever. And we might want to do something like that. Is construct a little area where we can just dump a pile of sand there for the residents to be able to get at, and make it convenient for them and hopefully easy for us to maintain as well.
Yeah, so I didn't know whether it'd be there or
Yeah, we'll
make a
have to
little
look.
cubby up here or something.
Yeah.
'Cause I just-
once we get the salt shed up and laid out, it might give us an idea of what else we can use the surrounding area for.
Yeah. That and just making it, the other thing is, like I said, just being careful that we don't encourage people going down to the salt shed and things like that. So
Yeah, that's a bit of a problem right now.
it always is. Well, the reason being is prior to Chief Chamberlain taking over, and I don't know how true it was. Again, this is just, the word on the street. When I moved here, everyone said per storm, you can get as much sand as you want from the pile and one 5-gallon bucket of salt per storm. That's when I first moved here.
Yeah.
That's what someone told me. And then they started blocking the shed. So I pretty much figured that must not be true. So I'm like, I would think that, but then, so.
Yeah, if you've looked at some of the invoices we've been getting for salt, it's not something we want to be giving away.
Oh, no. And that's my whole point. So anything that we can keep closer this way and keep people from driving around the
Yeah.
building to where we can't see stuff
Yeah.
is, I think, all the better.
And
You know,
also
'cause all
think
you
they
need to
mix
do
a
is-
little bit of salt into that sand that they put out.
So sometimes they do. In fact, I think if we're going to do that, that you should make people aware of that, because some people don't want to have salt because it will injure their animals and or their landscaping.
Or the fact that if you have a dirt driveway and you then put salt on it, it never freezes again.
Yes. That's what you need this time of year as you sink to your axles.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I use it
Yeah.
sparingly. But yeah, I was out trying to do it. The bag busted open on the bottom.
Yeah.
So now I had a big mud pit in
Oh,
one
just-
spot. It never froze again. It would
Yeah.
freeze, like the top would freeze of water, but as soon as that melted, you'd sink this far down in the mud because all the calcium carbonate went right into the
Yeah.
soil. So yeah, if it was sand salt mix, I wouldn't take it either. I just want sand just so I can get up and down my driveway.
Yeah.
If you had a paved driveway, it's not so big deal. You almost want it because
Yeah.
it's quick and then it washes off. But not so much on a dirt driveway.
No.
Yeah, you would have the same problem.
Yeah. Well.
Part of it.
Yeah. It's starting to turn into yeah. Do you have anything, Jay?
Oh, I met with the chief last week, and there was just one little item that he brought up that he said has been discussed in previous boards, and that was cleaning services for the police station, which I felt like was. We talked for a bit, but that to
Yeah.
me seemed like such a small item that it couldn't.
No,
be
it's
put
actually
back
something
on
we
the
talked about
agenda.
that Mark Hopkins is supposed to get us some quotes.
Hmm.
Because Scott has a list for him. We just need to get the quote so that we can find out. Because yeah, it's the same thing. We could have them do this and the police station at the same time.
And that was.
I'm sure we can find some way to get that. I'm sure we can find money in the budget for that. Because it is something we've talked about, and then come budget season, we keep forgetting it. But
Yeah.
but we'll
I
have
feel like we
have
discussed
some.
it a few times last year, and
But we'll have some buffer this year that we can get it done and then go with it.
so is Mark tasked with that, like to get the
I don't know whether I've mentioned it to him or not, quite frankly. We've talked about a lot of things. I honestly can't remember whether I told him or not, but I certainly have the material that we can start researching it on to start getting quotes.
That'd be awesome. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
But yeah, push it off on somebody.
I know, that's what I was thinking, you go through your list and.
I know, your list keeps getting longer, you push that off on some people.
And then we have the legislation, you know, like
Yep.
the letter, like
Yep.
that's important, for you to do as well. Yeah, it's just delegation of some of these other tasks. Maybe.
Alrighty.
And then was there any other word on that, overpayment to the school? Is there any news on it or anything, or?
No new news, other than we don't have to write a check for a while.
That's
But,
just,
That's what we have for now.
I'm gonna be trying to set up that meeting with the school committee hopefully, so we can have some dialogue about next year and see what impact that's gonna have,
yeah.
so.
Like I said, it's just baffling that we can be 3 months ahead of payment and getting a rebate. And that's just, when they were so adamant that they needed more money and we need it now.
Yeah,
And we said no, figuring that we knew our payments would go up even more. And now we're 3 months ahead and a rebate.
yeah.
So that just seems, but
Yeah, it seems like that.
yeah,
From what I remember last week, that's like almost the whole town operating budget.
It is.
it is.
I think a lot of people are
for
like
a year.
exactly what John just said.
Yeah.
How did this happen?
Right.
Yeah.
If there's no news, there's
Yeah.
no news. And I wonder, does the state step in to tell us what happens, or is this just normal municipal and SAU stuff that goes
Well-
on? I don't know. I'm a new guy.
Well, so the, my understanding is the way it's been worked here is the SAU gives us basically the payment schedule. They have their, their assessment of what each town needs to pay, and you take it and divide it by 12.
Yeah.
And that's your monthly payment.
Yeah, and that's, I understand what Jim Coffey was saying last week, but, I mean, this is the numbers we're given, like, this is how much it is, and because so,
Yeah, I'm wondering when, because originally when I got here, I think our payments were $652,000 a month. And then at some point they said, no, those need to be adjusted. And they went up to $776,000 a month. And that's what we've been paying. And so that extra, $120,000 a
yeah.
month has now created a surplus. So maybe we didn't need to increase our payments back when.
or at least not $125,000, yeah.
Right. So
Should we pick a date to invite them to?
I wanted to feel them out on what, on when they might be available, and see what their meeting schedule is like, and just.
Yeah, I mean, if we had, like I said, because
Well,
I
they can
mean,
zoom into our meeting.
well, we
can.
could zoom into theirs too.
Right,
Yeah, but the way that they conduct their meetings, there's not like an open dialogue. Like it would be, we'd present a question and then have to wait for a response potentially.
If we're on the docket, then there's,
Because I've listened into a few of them, and you make a statement.
that's
And then
that's if you're if you're part of the public.
Yeah, I haven't heard like to me, we'd be a part of the public essentially. We're
No,
not a
we're-
part of their board, because their board has a conversation between themselves.
We get put on the agenda for the night.
Yeah,
Everything that you hear like that's public comment section. But if you're on the agenda, like for example, I've been on the agenda for a school board when I was a district manager. So you go in and you present, so you have, like just anybody here. I mean, anybody can have public comment,
yeah,
but you have people that are on the agenda and you block them off for X amount of time. So they could block us off for a half-hour time slot, and we would have a half hour to, as the Board of Selectmen, talk with them, get questions answered, open up communication better, find out how did we end up 3 months, 3.5 months, 3 months plus $145,000 ahead of payment.
yeah. Because this again would be one that's like, right in people's minds,
Yep.
and in some way, it's tough because this is a priority. Like everything seems to be a priority.
you noticed that, did you?
Yeah. like it's not priority. So it's like, how do we like help address, maybe like the board help address this?
And that's why I was saying, I mean, I'd rather, if we
Would
have
you like
quite,
me to reach out to
Yeah.
the school board?
If you would like to do that, I will certainly be willing to
Okay,
pass the baton to you.
alright, I'll reach out to the school board.
so you know who the new chair is, correct?
No,
Rachel,
is it Rachel? Alright,
and Julie is the co,
yeah,
or vice, or whatever.
yeah, see, I would've had it flipped.
So,
So
yeah,
Steve Spratt was the chair before? No, is he still on?
he's still on. There was a coup. So yeah, and that's why I'm saying let's go on theirs instead of, that way it's on their time, not on Scott's time. We can, whether we come here and go, or we, from our, however we want to do it,
Yeah,
but at least that way it's a school board public meeting, not a selectman public meeting.
okay,
So it's not on us to do all the recording and notes, which means it's not on Scott and Susan to do the recording and notes. So I'm trying to help you out.
Yeah, well, I
So, yeah.
appreciate that.
I mean,
We
that's
do
what I'm
have
saying.
limited time
Like,
and resources
right.
here.
Like, okay, we go and then, we do our piece because I'll be honest, I also would rather do it where we can be sure that we have them and not just a piece of them.
yes,
Because if we say, okay, we want you to hear on a Tuesday night, you can zoom in,
yeah, if somebody can't.
you might get
Yeah.
one,
Yeah, that
you
makes
might get,
sense.
where if we can get on there, then they can make sure that we have their business administrator
Yeah,
on task to answer our questions.
mhm.
Because because then she could even say, hey, well, could you mind sending me a couple, what your concerns are, what your questions are, and then we can actually be prepared for it. But that way it's on them and not on us. But at least it puts it in their court and they make sure they have all their people lined up to be there for us. Because on a Tuesday night, we may not get their business administrator.
Mhm.
And I think that's somebody we need to be able to,
Yeah.
that's the
It
person who's
makes
gonna be
more
able to
sense.
answer it.
Yeah, to like, to go on their normal night.
Right.
Yeah.
And then she can tell you whether it would be, because then it may be to do it on the business meeting night and not on the, because they split their meetings. They have business
Yeah.
meetings, I think the first, and then they have like curriculum meetings or however departmental meetings on another night. So that way we could be part of the business night where I know those people will be there.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So that's one. Is there anything else that we could, like even the cleaning services, like would it be appropriate for Jay to work on that? Like if you wanted to?
I think that's
like, because it's been something that we've been discussing for like ever since came onto the board. Like
But,
it's
I
been
mean,
a topic.
It could, but at the same point, it's one of those things, we pay Mark. We pay Mark
Yeah.
to do this.
Okay.
When he gets the quotes for the oil and propane, that's part of his job. So for
even,
him,
like coordination, like through Mark, like would you want to take up that call, like just to make the phone call to Mark? Would that be appropriate, Scott?
That's
or
fine.
yeah.
aren't you on DPW?
What?
Aren't you on DPW?
No, I am, but trying to split some stuff up.
That's right. You trying to, you
Yeah,
trying-
but it's
it's
his
like
it's his liaison that is looking for a service. You could look at it either way. So
I have no problem talking to Mark. Scott.
yeah, Scott's got
Scott
a
told
list.
me
so,
that
but, I mean, it's fine. You just look
these
at you just
cleaning companies need to
Just
have
say-
certain
cleaning off your
certifications.
just cleaning off your plate, cleaning off your
And
plate.
is Mark aware of the different?
He is. I don't know if he would know all the details, but that's something that Tim could always fill in the blanks. But there are certain requirements, obviously, because of the confidential nature of some of the work that the police department does, that the cleaning services employees have to be vetted before they're going to be allowed into that building.
Yeah.
And
which I
actually that
imagine much
benefits-
like a bank.
Right, then they're normally bonded.
Banks,
There's,
yeah.
there's
Yeah.
normally the companies have something to do with that. And
Yeah.
I can do that. I, at the same time, don't wanna have things going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And Scott's like, what's going on here?
Well, no, you'd update, like you
Well,
did
yeah,
tonight, like it's the
I
same
understand
thing. Yeah.
in
Yeah, like I
this
said, really
case.
what you're trying to do is get quotes, you know, because they're gonna have to,
And
like I
it's not
said,
you getting the quotes, it's just following up with Mark. you know?
Right, yeah. And I don't have a problem doing that.
It's just help, team, right?
Works for me.
Okay.
Okay.
And communications. The big three. You wanna do the communications part in some way?
Comcast?
Yeah, something, like, get that going?
No.
No?
Oh, because I basically look at it, I'd call Comcast and go, you need to get down here and have
Train
someone
everybody,
train,
right?
you know, or send me a whole manual on how to do it. Otherwise, we're gonna, you know, the next thing would be we're pulling your system.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'll be honest, we didn't get multiple quotes last time.
Did I?
No,
so I
someone
was-
got us a deal, told us we had this great deal. They researched it, and
Didn't work out.
it didn't work out.
Apparently
no, we
not
never-
now.
It never did
Yeah,
from the
that's like-
beginning,
Yeah,
and that's when we started. All of a sudden, we had multiple bills and extra bills, and
Oh, yeah.
Tim's phone system went out like
Yeah,
a
it's
couple
not-
weeks. It went out completely one time on election day. He had no phone system, so no, it never worked out, and we never got what we were promised.
it's unfortunate.
Yep. But there's so many of the VoIP carriers and stuff now that are available that all you have to do is have the internet.
Right.
So you still keep the Comcast internet, but then you run somebody else's phone system through it.
Alright, yeah. But it always mystifies me how all that stuff works, like the shared, it's all like the same equipment basically, and
Yeah, it's like when you have
just a different support.
yeah, it's like when you have
That's what the
Comcast
company's are,
cable,
is the
but then you-
support part.
yeah, you get Comcast cable, but then you get Apple TV.
Yeah,
You know, you're still running on their lines.
yeah,
So
alright.
Alrighty.
Alright, motion to adjourn,
motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Me too.
Me too.